like, it's going front. Oh, son, it's nothing. You know what I mean? Yo, bad baby, it's nothing. You ain't saying nothing.
Meanwhile, he fall in love with you.
So, what's up?
Yeah, exactly.
And you had to be thorough to come in the studio type.
So who
it was just locked down
who made
like
it
that.
in the studio? Who got it in?
Nobody.
It was just
at that point. Nobody.
Could have been a missing Onyx member.
Guys.
He could have been a missing
Somebody
Onyx
told
member.
Fredro the L shit. What they said?
They said DMX is Onyx all
together.
Every stage, DMX driving tour buses.
How you gonna say
Rest in
driving
peace
the
to
tour
X.
bus?
Driving the tour bus.
Starr thought he understood chaos until he came face to face with DMX. What began as real brotherhood on tour slowly shifted into a quiet clash over style, dominance, and reputation. City after city, cipher after cipher, the tension kept stacking. It didn't explode overnight, it simmered. And eventually, DMX chose to silence the noise the only way he knew how, out in the open, direct, and cold. This wasn't just rap drama either. Behind the scenes, X was already moving through real street pressure.
Fredro Starr. I got one on Baby Mo's. I had 2 LA and Cali. I see him in the club. He a little loud. Yo, son, what up, baby? Yo, he that nigga. Yo, shorty. Yo, stuff, son, you got that? That's yours. Say, yo, nah, son, I'm saying that's all you, baby. Very little English. She wasn't even a citizen. But, thanks to the baby, now she's a citizen.
Good for you.
Yeah. God bless
Helping
America.
women all over the world.
God bless America. Yeah, yeah.
DMX came out. Everyone said, man, he's a copy version of Onyx.
Your man X on the Breakfast Club trying to make me look like trying to make me seem like a sucker for love type of dude, and ain't nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? X know me, you know how to get at me, call me, man. That's all you gotta do, but ain't no games over here, man.
So when Fred tried to test him, X didn't bark back. He responded with action, no hesitation. Let's talk about how this really started. When DMX first crossed paths with Onyx, it wasn't through label meetings or industry handshakes. It was raw proximity. Mid-1990s New York was a pressure zone, and every rapper was trying to prove who carried the most weight. Onyx already had that image locked down. Bald heads, black Timberlands, hard stares, no friendly energy. Their studio sessions were locked tight, no outsiders, no joking around. As Fredro Starr later said, you couldn't just walk into an Onyx session.
On the Breakfast Club trying to make me look like trying to make me seem like a sucker for love type of dude, and ain't nothing like that.
Fredro Starr. I got one on Baby Mo's. I had 2 LA and Cali. I see him in the club. He a little loud. Yo, son, what up, baby? Yo, he that nigga. Yo, shorty. Yo, stuff, son, you got that? That's yours. Say, yo, nah, son, I'm saying that's all you.
X was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know?
Let him know ain't nothing sweet over here. And that's it, man. Ain't nothing to talk about, ain't no beef. X know me, you know how to get at me.
That space was guarded, and everybody felt it. So when a young DMX from Yonkers walked into a Jersey basement studio in 1995, expectations were low. But once he started rhyming, the room shifted. The energy dropped. Fred remembered it clearly. DMX had that same cold intensity Onyx had built their entire identity on. FGA later joked that DMX could have been the 5th Onyx member. The voice, the aggression, the way he moved in the booth. Same cloth, same edge. And that was the real problem. That level of similarity doesn't create comfort. It creates rivalry. By the time they officially linked up in 1998 for Shut 'Em Down, both camps were already fully formed.
If he ever tried it again, he'd be in of the firing pin.
Where we going for the real one?
Girl, anywhere you want.
DMX had Fat Joe so angry, according to these documents, that he wanted to see them unalive, and he actually put some effort into this happening.
Onyx were seasoned veterans from the early 90s grind. DMX was the new alpha, fresh off It's Dark and Hell is Hot, moving like someone who knew the crown was within reach. Everything was running off pure adrenaline. When they linked up in that studio again, there was no small talk, no laughs, no warming up, just beats, smoke in the air, and tension sitting heavy. Fred later admitted he already knew what kind of record this was going to be. Not a friendly collaboration, but a lyrical sparring match. Every verse landed like it was thrown with bad intentions. And when Shut 'Em Down dropped, you could hear that edge clearly. The energy was unhinged.
He said, this guy just
That DMX too. This guy kidnapped people. You were a scary guy. I said, I'm figuring it out. He said, you call this number at any time. We'll come pick you up at the park.
DMX was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
Back with a blunt rolled up. And as I'm counting the money, he likes the blunt. And I said, I was impressed. I don't really smoke, nigga. Got it. And he passed the blunt around. And, wow.
The Hard Knock Life tour, then the Rough Rider tour. But that one right there, that's the one where I was like, what the fuck is this tour? Like, I want to go to one of these shows.
Two styles that should have clashed somehow made each other stronger. Instead of canceling out, they multiplied the aggression. On stage, it wasn't performance energy, it was raw pressure. That same intensity nearly crossed the line during the survival of the illest tour. You could see it every night, not open hostility, but that uneasy respect that only exists when two men recognize too much of themselves in each other. Fred once said that being around X meant never knowing what was coming next. He meant that literally. 1 minute DMX would be backstage praying with the crew. The next minute he'd be revving the tour bus engine like he was ready to take the wheel himself. Everybody stayed sharp around him, not out of fear, but because he carried an unpredictable spark that could flip the entire vibe without warning. For all that volatility, there was a real bond there. Fred and DMX were built the same way, natural fighters who led with heart before logic. On tour, they'd do push-ups in hotel lobbies, clown each other, and compete over everything. Nothing about it felt fake. That respect came from shared chaos, not industry politics. When the tour wrapped, the energy didn't disappear. They weren't close friends, but they were connected in spirit, tied together by that same hunger to dominate every room they stepped into. Fans picked up on it too. Whenever Shut 'Em Down was performed live, the crowd could feel that static in the air. Not beef, but electricity. Like something could pop off at any moment. Behind the scenes, there was also an unspoken code. Both camps respected the rules of that hardcore rap world. Loyalty mattered. Authenticity mattered. Survival mattered most. DMX showed Onyx respect, even when the industry tried to pit them against each other. That mutual respect held strong. But underneath it all, the same fire that made them click also made the bond fragile. When your whole identity is built on dominance, friendship never stays simple. Once things turned personal, even without words, that brotherhood could flip into rivalry overnight. People point to diss tracks or radio comments, but the real tension started way before anyone saw smoke. Nearly a decade before the 2012 blow-up, the fuse was already burning. There was one moment that quietly cracked the trust between two men who once called each other brothers. It happened around 2002, right when DMX was deep in his Hollywood phase and Fredro was still one of the closest people in his circle. What started as a simple night out turned into the first real fracture in something that once felt solid. Fredro showed up to a movie premiere with a woman he later described casually, just a shorty hanging around for the night. In his own words, he told X, "That's you, son," meaning there was no issue, no jealousy, no boundaries crossed in his mind. In street terms, that was a clear pass, a sign of trust. But with DMX, situations never stayed that simple. Years later, DMX went on The Breakfast Club and told the story like it was a joke. He framed Fred as the friend who caught feelings, claiming Fred kept calling and texting the woman all night, asking if she was still around. The way X told it, the room laughed. To him, it was entertainment. Then he added more details that made things worse. He claimed the woman later became pregnant and suggested she barely spoke English, wasn't a citizen, and only gained legal status because of the child. Whether exaggerated or misunderstood, the story came off messy and disrespectful. It was private business turned into public spectacle, and it didn't need to be said. For Fredro, hearing that story aired out wasn't funny at all. It felt like a straight violation. In his own retelling, he said everyone was laughing, treating it like comedy, but the moment his name came up, it stopped being a joke to him. That was trust being dragged on air. To understand why this cuts so deep, you have to look at DMX's past behavior. He had a history of airing personal situations publicly when emotions took over. Years earlier, during a legal dispute involving Monique Wayne, DMX made public claims that were later challenged in court. Those statements didn't just spark backlash. They led to serious legal consequences when the court ruled against him after he failed to appear, resulting in a large judgment. That pattern mattered. It showed how private conflicts could quickly turn into public damage when X spoke off instinct instead of restraint. By 2012, that same impulsive energy was still there. His Breakfast Club appearance wasn't some planned attack. It was raw, unfiltered talk. But while DMX may have seen it as storytelling, Fred saw it as reopening an old wound, one he had kept quiet about for years. He never ran to interviews, never chased sympathy, never tried to flip it into attention. And that silence is what made the betrayal hit harder. But the moment X tossed Fred's name onto a national broadcast just to get laughs, that was the line getting stepped on. Both men came from a world where respect mattered, no debate. And underneath that personal fallout sat a deeper creative tension that had been simmering for years. Fred and Sticky Fingers had both hinted quietly at first that DMX's barking, growling delivery wasn't brand new. In their eyes, Onyx had been pushing that raw sound long before X blew up. Sticky even took it online, asking fans a question that sounded playful but cut deep. Is DMX a copycat or a big dog? In hip-hop, that kind of question isn't light. It goes straight to authenticity, the currency artists live and die by. For DMX, authenticity wasn't just part of the image. It was the whole thing. Every bark, every growl, every stripped-down verse came from who he believed he was at his core. Suggesting he borrowed that from someone else wasn't criticism, it was erasure. And that was the one thing X never accepted. So when the Breakfast Club story and the Onyx comments hit the public at the same time, it stopped being gossip. It turned into conflict on two levels, personal and artistic. Fred saw the interview as disrespect to his name. DMX saw the style accusations as disrespect to his identity. The irony is heavy. Two men who reflected each other's energy almost perfectly ended up clashing over who owned it first. Fred's response didn't come wild or reckless. He broke it down calmly in interviews, saying, "He tried to make me look like some sucker for love type dude. That's not me. He using my name to catch laughs. And it ain't funny." He wasn't denying everything either. He confirmed the basics. Yes, there was a woman. Yes, it was casual. What crossed the line was the public disrespect. In their world, there's an unwritten rule. Don't drag another man's name into your personal mess, especially not on national radio. Fred explained it plain. He know me. He know how to get at me. To most people, DMX's comments sounded like another unpredictable X moment, just another viral clip. But for Fred Starr, it was a clear line crossed. And once that line was crossed, there was no way it was getting ignored. That's why days after DMX's Breakfast Club interview, Fred showed up online. No entourage, no studio lights. Just Fred Rowe, hoodie on, standing in front of a mic. He stared straight into the camera on his Firestar 16 Bars web series and dropped a freestyle that made it clear who he was addressing. His tone stayed calm, but the message landed cold. "Yo, it's your boy Fred Starr," he said. "We going off the top this week. No Blackberries, no iPhones, straight raw." There was no yelling, no chaos, just intent. He didn't scream DMX's name or chase shock value. He responded in the only language that mattered in their world: bars, codes, respect. This wasn't about violence, it was about restoring balance. In that culture, there were lines you didn't cross. You don't play with another man's name. You don't put his personal life on display. You don't joke on his pride. Fred's freestyle carried a warning that felt heavy. Even in a genre built on bravado, the delivery felt serious. Too serious for some. Later, Fred said it wasn't beef. It wasn't a challenge. It was a message. Don't play with my name. But to outsiders, it looked like a full declaration of battle. DMX didn't rush to the booth. He didn't drop a response track. He didn't gather a crew. Instead, he handled it in a way nobody expected. He went to TMZ. That alone flipped the script. When asked about Fred's freestyle and the tough talk, X barely reacted. He smiled, looked into the camera and said, "I ain't worried about him. He's a midget. He can't even reach my knee." In that moment, the whole energy shifted. The tension drained instantly. What sounded dangerous seconds earlier turned into comedy. DMX didn't argue the bars. He didn't defend himself. He shrank the entire situation into a joke, and it landed. It wasn't really about height, it was about hierarchy. DMX was saying, without saying it directly, that Fred wasn't on his level, not close enough to be a threat. Then came the line that stuck. X leaned in and added, "All he is a sitcom Moshe gangster. He should stick to being a reality gangster because that's all he's good for." Everybody in hip-hop understood that shot. Fred Starr wasn't just a rapper. He had a real acting career. He appeared in films like Clockers and Sunset Park, and later on The Wire. But to the mainstream audience, his most famous role was still Q, Brandy's boyfriend on the 1990s UPN sitcom Moesha. The clean-cut guy. The one parents trusted. DMX didn't attack Fred's bars. He attacked the image. And once that happened, the entire conflict shifted into a different lane. DMX took that clean image, the one that helped turn Fred into a household name, and flipped it on him. He turned Moshe Gangster into a punchline that stuck. Overnight, every threat Fred made started sounding rehearsed, like leftover dialogue from a show that got canceled. The insult landed because it pulled from something real. And in hip-hop, truth carries weight. Commentators picked up on it fast. One host even said that name was going to follow Fred, and it did. The same streets that once saw Onyx as pit bulls and Timberlands now saw Fred as a sitcom star trying to play tough. DMX didn't need to threaten him back. He didn't need to escalate. He laughed him out of the moment. That was the real warfare. Fred spoke in the language of violence. DMX responded with embarrassment. That's what made X dangerous in a different way. Not just the bark, but how easily he could shrink someone with a few words. And what made that silence hit even harder was this. DMX didn't have to pretend. His real life was surrounded by people who would actually pull triggers. The kind of men Fred claimed to be around, X really was, and he never hid from that. Around the same time this whole exchange was unfolding online, real danger stayed close to DMX. One story later surfaced through court documents involving another New York heavyweight. According to a lawsuit, after a verbal clash in Miami, Fat Joe allegedly told people around him, "If he acts up, take the hammer." In street language, that meant if DMX resisted, shoot him. It never happened. DMX didn't come outside that night. That single decision may have saved his life. And it wasn't the only close call. Violence followed his name everywhere. Years later, Fat Joe himself told a story about being overseas with DMX in Angola, where they were allegedly detained by a local warlord named Ruo, a man so feared that even hotel staff avoided eye contact. DMX, already living chaos back home, suddenly found himself in a real hostage situation. Halfway across the world, face to face with someone tied to real bloodshed, the danger was no longer metaphor. Gun talk was never entertainment to DMX. It was background noise, lawsuits, threats. Real danger followed him everywhere. So when Fred Starr went online rapping about firing pins and friends crying at funerals, X didn't even blink. Compared to what he'd already lived through, a YouTube freestyle wasn't danger. It was a distraction. That's why he laughed it off. He called him a midget, a Moshe gangster. Then he walked away while the internet did the rest. Across forums, blogs, and early YouTube comment sections, fans went back and forth. Some said Fred's freestyle felt like real rap, that raw Onyx-style energy straight out of the 90s. Others said DMX ended the whole situation with one sentence. Sitcom, Moesha gangster. That line spread fast. Before memes even had a name, it became one. Fred, meanwhile, looked heated in interviews, trying to explain himself, trying to reclaim control of the moment. But once you become the punchline, there's no clean way to reverse it. The magazines caught on too. XXL, The Source, Hip Hop DX all ran short write-ups. Different outlets, same tone. DMX wasn't engaging in a feud. He was brushing it off. One journalist summed it up clean. Fred Starr was dissing for attention. DMX was dealing with court dates. That contrast said everything. Fred's anger lived online. DMX's chaos lived in real places, courtrooms, addiction clinics, real confrontations that could have ended his life. When fans really looked at it, they saw the difference. Fred was acting out a version of a life. DMX was barely surviving the real thing. That's why X's silence landed so hard. He wasn't ducking smoke. He wasn't scared. He just didn't have space for someone performing toughness when his own reality was already heavy behind the scenes. Later on, Onyx tried to cool the situation down in interviews. Sticky Fingaz, Fred, and FGA all described DMX as family. Unpredictable, loud, full of energy, but never fake. Sticky even told stories from the Def Jam tour days. Sharing buses, sharing hotels, sometimes sharing rooms just to save money. The label sold it like a family for marketing, but behind the scenes it really was one. They argued, they competed, they clashed, but there was love under it. For a while though, Fred couldn't publicly back down. He'd gone too far on camera. He had to stand on his words. Still, you could hear the shift. The heat was fading. The anger was more about pride than hate. Later, Fred said it himself. He didn't hate DMX. He just didn't want to be disrespected. He kept saying the same thing. It wasn't beef. It was something I had to check out. Out of respect. We grown men. It's all love. That was January 2014. About a year and a half after everything exploded, Fred Starr finally buried the hatchet. DMX, on the other hand, never said Fred's name again. Not in a verse, not in an interview, not even in passing. That silence wasn't accidental. It was the final move. Like the whole situation never even mattered. And that silence became part of DMX's legend. Years later, when Onyx members looked back on that Def Jam family era, you could hear it in their voices. Nostalgia mixed with respect. Even with everything that happened, Fred still said the same thing. DMX was dangerous. Not in an evil way, just unpredictable. You never knew what he was gonna do next. That unpredictability is what separated him from everyone else. You couldn't strategize against someone who wasn't playing the same game. Fred tried to go bar for bar. DMX responded by stepping away. And somehow, walking away made him look even stronger. As time passed, the story faded. Fred moved on. Onyx kept releasing music. DMX's battles shifted inward. Addiction, bankruptcy, probation violations, all out in the open. He wasn't acting tough. His entire life was a fight. Looking back, the irony stings. DMX wasn't mocking Fred out of cruelty. He was exposing a gap, the gap between image and experience. Between performing danger and actually living inside it, Fred's world was cameras, tours, Hollywood roles. DMX's world was courtrooms, rehab centers, and survival. While people laughed at Moesha Gangsta, DMX was dealing with real consequences. That same period, he was ordered to pay millions related to legal judgments involving Monique Wayne. He also owed the IRS close to $700,000. And on top of all that, he was still battling an addiction that started when he was just 14 after someone laced his first blunt. None of that was scripted. So when people called DMX a reality gangster, it wasn't a joke. It was a description. His life didn't turn off when the cameras did. The public saw that contrast clearly. That's why when Fred later said there was no beef, fans respected it. Both men said what they needed to say. Only one man's silence carried the weight of everything he'd survived. DMX never needed a closing statement. His life already said enough. Years after the tension died down, Fred sat in interviews revisiting those memories. You could hear the change. No bitterness, just appreciation. He talked about the late 90s when Onyx moved to Jersey, but spent so much time in Harlem that people thought they were from there. The past didn't sound heavy anymore. It sounded understood. One day they caught word that DMX was shooting the Rough Riders anthem video just up the block. No planning, no calls. They just pulled up, jumped out the Jeep, and walked straight into the chaos. DMX handed them Rough Riders shirts, and next thing you know, Onyx were standing on top of the truck in what became one of the most iconic rap videos of that era. Fred smiled every time he told that story. That moment wasn't business. It wasn't ego or competition. That was hip-hop in its rawest form. Loud, unfiltered, spontaneous. Fred said it best. They were just showing love. And so was X. After that, Fred and DMX stayed around each other often. Looking back now, it all lines up. DMX wasn't just another rapper from that era. He was a force. The kind of presence that filled a room before he ever spoke. Sticky Fingers and FGA both said when X showed up, the air felt different, thicker, heavier, alive. He didn't need security or a big entourage. Fred said DMX would pull up to video sets by himself, just him and his dog. No driver, no handler. He'd stay all day, no complaints. That alone said more about who he was than any verse ever could. When DMX passed in April 2021, the shock hit hard. He was only 50. A heart attack tied to years of pain and addiction finally silenced one of hip-hop's rawest voices. The reaction was massive. Fans, artists, rivals, people who had clashed with him, and people who loved him. Everybody felt it. Among those tributes, Fred Starr released his own song titled R.I.P. DMX. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't defensive, it was pure respect. Fred called X special, someone whose pain and connection to God were unlike anyone else's. Now when Fred talks about DMX, the tone is different. The jokes are gone. What's left is respect, a quiet understanding. DMX didn't just dominate the game, he lived it, felt it, and paid for it. In his final interviews, Fred said it clearly. Love is love. This whole hip-hop thing is a movie, and X was one of the realest characters in it. By the end, the rivalry didn't matter. What remained was the music, the energy, and the legacy. Two warriors from the same era who fought the same fight and eventually saw each other clearly. If you made it this far, drop a comment with your thoughts on this story. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives like this. Share it with someone who loves hip-hop history, and I'll see you on the next one.